This is an ultimate global podcast. Hello, and welcome to our special weekly podcast on trending international and social affairs. You're listening to Saurabh Kora and George Mavros from Sydney.
Well, welcome again to another exciting episode that we are covering here with the CXOs, founders and co-founders. Special series of episodes that we have been covering with more than 15 CEOs till now. And definitely it's been a very progressive one because there is always new things to learn from young entrepreneurs and also new CEOs or even CEOs taking over established companies. It's always something new that we can take away from. Now, one of the coolest terms, we have heard in the last 1 year or so is artificial intelligence, ChatGPT. Go slightly back, and even now, I think the other fancy term that you can think of in your mind is what is virtual reality? What's augmented reality? These fancy terms that come into the podcasting world and this LinkedIn world that we have created now. Everybody wants to know what's this AR, what's this VR thing going on. And I'm pretty sure more than half of them don't even really understand. They just call it fancy because it sounds fancy for some reason. But we're going to uncover that fanciful world today with our special guest joining us from Denmark, Sune Wolff. I tried my best to practice it at least 100 times before this podcast to make it correct. But hopefully I made it sound right, Sune.
That's perfectly fine. Yeah, thanks.
So do you want to start off this session, telling us a bit more about what you do at SynergyXR and how did you really come up with this idea on this fanciful term?
Yeah. So this story can drag on for quite a while because we have quite a history in the company. So please interrupt with any follow-up questions. But yeah, so my name is Sune Wolff. I'm CTO and co-founder of SynergyXR. And we work with XR technology, and we use XR as sort of an umbrella term of like AR, augmented reality, VR, virtual reality, mixed reality that people use, spatial computing that Apple started using, which is actually an old term, but we can come back to that later. But sort of an umbrella term, like we work with all these technologies. And for people that are not sort of like know these names, just very quickly, like virtual reality is when you put on a pair of VR goggles and you are fully enclosed in a virtual world where you can physically move around, but you can also virtually move around. So you can teleport. So you can basically, in a small physical space, you can experience a huge virtual world, right? Whereas augmented reality is where you see the real world and then you superimpose digital content on top of it. So I think most popular known from a game like Pokemon Go, where you, through your camera phone, you see the real world, but you can then superimpose it with these small Pokemon avatars. But we use it more to actually enable like frontline workers to get digital assets right next to the real machinery they're working with. And then mixed reality is sort of by now, I think it's a term that will slowly die because it was back when augmented reality wasn't as evolved yet, whereas mixed reality is more where you get a spatial understanding. So the goggles you have on, like the Microsoft HoloLens and other upcoming headsets, understands the world. So the physical world, so you can actually have digital content interact physically with the physical world. So like a simple example would be to have a virtual ball in your hand and let it drop, and then it would bounce on the table and on the floor and stuff like that. So that's sort of the umbrella term to sort of get the nomenclature in place. And we work with all these technologies mainly, or like with a laser focus on B2B companies within manufacturing and the energy sector, mainly for creating training and onboarding environments to quickly, efficiently, and safely onboard and upskill workers that work in like potentially dangerous environments or machinery that can be hard to reach. So an example would be an offshore wind turbine. It's pretty damn expensive to fly a person out there in a helicopter, but being able to train with colleagues in a pure virtual environment in a multi-user session. So you can have a trained or an experienced trainer in there that supervise the training and see how you progress is a very efficient way to sort of increase the learning curve. So that's like in a nutshell the technologies we work with. And going back to sort of the history of the company, we're actually the team behind the former company called Unity Studios. And Unity Studios was founded way back in 2008 by the original founders of Unity Technologies that create and publish the Unity game engine, which is used for like 60% of all XR experiences. And that was back when they were like 14 people in the company, and they needed a consultancy leg to sort of help game studios use their technology. And fast forward, myself and two colleagues took over leadership of the company in, our current CEO in 2013, I think it was. I joined the company in 2017, and we went through a process, bought up all the shares of the company, and then co-founded SynergyXR in 2020. And that was sort of with the ambition, like we had spent many years creating these training experiences and augmented reality experiences for remote support, but everything was done like as bespoke solutions. So we started from scratch every time, and it just got very expensive and very not scalable at all for the end customers. So we had this vision of making a product out of this, trying to make it as easy as, like, you can compare it to some of the CMS systems for websites. Like way back in the dawns of the internet, people were coding websites in HTML and JavaScript, and then came along the CMS systems like WordPress and Joomla, and today would be Wix.com or Squarespace. Like, that makes it possible for everybody to create like really decent looking websites, right? And be able to edit it themselves. And even if you go to a bureau that creates a website for you, they will usually use these tools and hand it over to you so you can easily do these edits yourself. And that's the exact same mindset that we put into the product SynergyXR, which is called the same as our company. It's a drag and drop no code tool that spans all these technologies. So you can create your own digital experiences, either in a pair of VR goggles or devices that you're more used to, like your laptop, your PC, your Mac, or even your smartphone. And like everything is fully multi-user, so you can meet your colleagues across these different devices, create, edit your own training experiences, and just makes it much more scalable and affordable for companies.
Yep. So while you're going through this journey of creating such a fantastic product, Sune, there are a lot of lows and highs that we always discuss with the top CEOs. There are highs where you celebrate your achievements and everything is going good and the sun is shining bright, we were talking about before. But then there are also these lows when nothing is going your way, and whatever tactics or strategies you're applying, it's not working out. So do you have any leadership lessons that you have kind of learned on your journey in the last 5 or 6 years?
There's probably a lot. I think one of, like, I try to be a very empathic leader. I try to, like, I'm like blessed and honored to be working with some of the brightest minds in this technology. So my team is who I usually go to. Like, I try to involve my team a lot. So not just doing like top-down strategic management, but trying to really include these bright minds, have them be involved in the process of like how to implement different features and how to actually like we even involve the engineering team in like sales strategy meetings, like just to get their input. Like maybe they're sitting on a bit of knowledge that is just what unlocks sort of the new market for us, right? So we really try to be very inclusive in that regard. Also, just like the entire idea of like distributed pool of knowledge and getting everything into play is something that we certainly try to. And apart from that, I think it's also important to like network with other startup founders, because I think even though not working in with the same technologies, trying to hit the same markets, you experience a lot of the same highs and lows, as you said, right? And like experiences and things that worked out well or not so well can easily be applied in other areas as well. So I started out a small local CTO network where it's just like 4 CTOs from 4 completely different companies, but geographically close. We meet up like every 2 or 3 months and just take up a few topics. And it can be everything from like the latest and greatest backend technologies to exactly like people management, fundraising. Like it can be anything basically. I think that's certainly something that I would advise other people to do as well. Try to network, try to share, like just be aware that you're not alone with some of these struggles from time to time.
Fantastic. And I think one of the biggest things in this podcast that you'll always experience is it's a flavor of this youthfulness and the experienced mindset that we bring in for our audience. So why not we sit into an experienced mindset to dig a bit deeper and ask you some tough questions. Off to you, George.
Firstly, thank you for explaining all of that to us. It sounds like a journey. Why do you do it? What's your why?
Why we built what we built in the company, or why I'm striving to be a leader?
Why are you doing this in this business? Why aren't you out selling cars or building buildings? Or what's your why for this is where I want to be, this is what I want to do?
Yeah. So we see in these industries that we've picked and that we have been working with for like close on 15 years, like there's again coming back to this like pool of knowledge. There's a lot of like blue collar workers that has an immense amount of knowledge out there that doesn't come into play. And it really needs to, because a lot of them are getting older and they're looking towards retirement, and the younger generation doesn't have sort of the same, like they don't stay in the same jobs for that long. So we have a risk of a huge like knowledge drain if we don't do anything about it. And digitizing some of their knowledge is really like an important step for that. So we digitize it, standardize training so we can easily upskill the newer, younger generation. That just will happen to jump from jobs more and more often. So we need to be able to upskill them that much quicker. And also coming back to like one thing is we usually digitize the like standard operation procedures that actually a white collar usually has written down, like this is how you operate this machine, this is what you need to do if this and this happens. But there's also a huge pool of what I would call more tribal knowledge, like these experienced workers that have been working with these machines for like 15 plus years, right? They know what to do if it deviates from the standard operation procedure. And actually being able to capture that and not capture it by sitting down and interviewing these old guys, because that can be really hard to just like pull that knowledge out of them, but enabling, giving them tools so they can document it themselves in an easy and efficient way to sort of leave that knowledge behind. Because we know, talking to these guys, like they're concerned that their knowledge will be lost, and they would love to pass it on to the next generation, but they just don't know how. And we feel like with a tool like SynergyXR, this is made much more easy for the older generation to actually document it, and also much more accessible to the younger generation that actually has to receive this information.
So how long have you been into the journey now in the business, this business?
So I joined the business in the summer of 17.
So you're in there. You've been in there for about 6 years.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you go back and tell the guy in the summer of 17 coming into this business now?
If what? Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, you've been in the business for 6 years, so you have that wonderful thing, hindsight, that only works in reverse. What do you go and say to that guy, Sune, that's coming in 2017? What would you say to him? this is the good parts, and watch out, this is what's coming your way. So, what would you say to yourself?
Yeah. So I would certainly encourage that guy to stick to his vision. It was quite quickly. I found a sketch I made. I had only been in the company for 4 months when I sketched out the architecture of SynergyXR. Back then, we were just doing it was consultancy business, so we were doing one project at a time. So I would certainly encourage me to continue that, because I truly believe this is the only way that we will scale the use of these technologies. I think I would also encourage me to we should have looked much quicker looked at what we were good at, and I mean that both in an ICP, so ideal customer profile. Going back a few years, we were looking quite a bit broader than we are today, and I think I wouldn't call it a mistake, but we wasted some time there, and I think it could have been avoided, because we actually know the manufacturing business and the energy sector quite well. We've been working with them for a lot of years, but we had the feeling that we had a tool that was much more widely applicable. So we started out targeting a much wider market, and I think that just stretched us a little bit too thin, both in sales, in marketing, but also in the product, trying to make everybody happy instead of focusing on a more narrow ICP and really doubling down on them, which we have been doing the last 1 to 2 years. So I would say that we could definitely have improved there. Then I think regarding more on a management level, there's this saying, hire for attitude, not for skill. You can train for skill, right? And that certainly goes a long way. I don't think we've had a lot of failed hires, but certainly the people that you sit down with and you just click, you just have that feeling okay, this guy or this woman, they know they know what they want. It fits with the vision. They will fit right into the team. They might be missing a little bit here and there, that can be trained. So I would certainly really say hire with your gut feeling, hire for attitude, someone you can see yourself working long nights with. That would be a recommendation as well.
So we were talking the other day to a guy, and we were talking about courage, and we're talking about courage versus confidence, and people being courageous in business as opposed to being confident. And I was talking to him, we were talking about the fact that a lot of staff aren't courageous because they're too scared to be courageous, because if they make a mistake, they think, well, I'm going to get my head lopped off. So thinking of the team you work with, how do you try to instill courage into your team to have a go, to not be afraid of failure and those sorts of things? Or is it very much a rigid, we'll tell you what to do and you go and do it?
No, we try to involve people a lot. So also they feel they're part of the solution. And also as I said, I'm blessed with some people that in a lot of areas are much brighter than me. And that's a luxury to have a team like that, right? So it would be crazy to sit down and say how they should solve something. But I think it also, how do I say this? One thing is saying it, because everybody you should encourage people to, it's okay to fail, but it's really a matter of not what you say, but what you do. So really, really meaning it when you say it, right? As an example, my engineering team, I think most engineers are not too happy when making estimates of a task. And I always say to them, it's really important. And it's not important because I'm going to hit you over the head if you don't reach that estimate. It's really important to ensure that we see eye to eye on this task. So if I have an idea that this task should be done in 2-3 days, and the engineer comes back to me saying it's probably going to take 2 weeks, there's something wrong, right? So either I haven't explained and scoped the task well enough for the engineer to sort of really double down on what's important, or I have completely missed some complexity that he knows because he's just down in the trenches every day. And then like his estimate, like it's more a discussion offset than it is, well, why are you so slow? Like it shouldn't take 2 weeks, it should take 2 days. It's more a matter of, okay, there's something wrong here because we don't see the same. So how do we solve that? Like, is it because he or she thinks that the task is this big and I expect it just to be like a small thing that needs to be done, right? So I think that's also another thing, especially if you have a culture where people are used to being blamed if they don't reach deadlines, and if they fail, they will also start overestimating, sort of to cover their ass. Sorry, my French. So they sort of, okay, then I have some more time in case stuff runs over. And that's really not what I'm interested in. It's the interesting discussion of, do we see the same task? Have I missed something that is really important? That like, is there something wrong with the architecture? Should we maybe go back a step and do some foundational work first and then build on top of it, because we're sort of building on a house of cards or stuff like that.
Thank you. Back to you, sir.
So a lot of people out on LinkedIn, Sune, they call themselves as gurus and mentors, and they've got these 3 magic words that will change your life. A lot of young entrepreneurs and founders, they must be listening to you today, must be thinking, all right, we want to be like Sune maybe after 5-6 years with our product that we are building on right now. What's the 3 guru tips or magic words or 3 lessons that you would share with them when they're listening to this episode?
I'm probably the wrong one to ask, because I really dislike sort of fantastic advice like that. I'm also not like a person to brag around about my like past achievements. There's people where you see in their LinkedIn title, you have like Sune Wolff, a PhD. Yeah, I have a PhD in computer science, but I don't flag around with it. For me, it was a piece of hard work, but it was not something that I think most people could do if they really wanted to. Like, it don't need like an over the moon high IQ or something like that. It's a matter of like really deciding that this is something you want to do and then put in the work for like 3 long years. But yeah, it is what it is. I would say like, and I think some of the usual stuff that are being said out there, and sometimes a guy like me that is very practical and not sort of a fantast, I could sort of like roll my eyes at them back in the days. But I think like ensuring you know who your customer is, like who's going to be using this product, ensure you really understand them, and like make sure that you solve a problem for them that is tangible, that you don't just create a tool, because you will end up with a hammer and then looking for some nails you can hammer in, right? And I think a lot, especially engineers, and I could easily be a victim of this myself. You're just interested in creating something really cool and hard to solve, right? But it'll make your journey as an entrepreneur much easier if you make sure that you really know who you're targeting, who your target audience is, who's your customer, what's their problem, and is this problem worth solving? Like, is it something that bothers them enough to sort of have them invest in a product that will help them solve this problem? I think along those lines would be some of the like best recommendations I could get. And to be honest, it's also where it gets fun, like seeing your product actually solving real problems and not just being some cool tech that's being put on the shelf, right? So I would really double down on that. I would say we were lucky to have that long-lasting relationship with a lot of these companies that are now customers on our platform, through like more bespoke solutions and that we create for them, because that gives just a very, very deep insight into these companies and some of the challenges that are not easily found, like when a when a training specialist asked us to create a VR-based training for a manufacturing business. It was like an assembly instruction. It was one thing was getting the SO like standard operation procedure, but another thing was actually talking to Erling, like the guy on the floor who'd been working with this machine for 20 plus years. And like there was such a mismatch between what was written and then his knowledge, and realizing that, like having that understanding that this is probably not the only company where that's the case, that has certainly helped us a lot. So I don't know, like that was certainly wasn't three good advice, but yeah.
Yeah. I think that was perfectly good, and I'm pretty amazed by the new technologies that are coming up recently, including the XR solutions. And you were able to kind of dig a bit deeper into the leadership traits as well. Do you have any questions, any final questions, George, before we kind of wrap up today's episode with Sune?
No, but I would like to comment on a point that he made. I work with people that I work in patents and copyright and trademark and that as well. I do many different things. And I often say to people, and people listening to this podcast and listening to Sune and what he's got to say, you never make the mistake of overcomplicating the answer to a simple problem. And sometimes we get carried away. Inventors and engineers and that, they create this fantastic solution, but the problem wasn't that big anyway. Now, I think my final question to you, Sune, would be, where do you think you're going to be in 5 years' time?
That's a good question, especially in a technological landscape as the one we're working in, because things are moving so fast. Like it's So I often get asked, like my board of directors like to ask that question as well, and I always say, like, I'm not a true believer in having like an 18 months or more like technical roadmap that is just like in concrete, like you cannot change that because things are changing so rapidly. I would say what I'm hoping where we are as a company is that we have had a significant part in ensuring that these technologies, which have had, like, you can read all the reports that there's so much promise in using these technologies. Like, you can increase learning rate, you learn much faster, you learn much safer, like you don't put people in potential harm when you need to be trained. The knowledge retention is so much higher, people are much more focused on the training, but it has been too expensive, and it has been like not accessible enough to really scale. So I hope that we have had a significant impact on ensuring that XR technologies are being used at scale in companies. We're currently focusing mainly on sort of the Northern European markets, and we're slowly moving into the US market. So certainly in 5 years' time, we should have a solid grasp on parts of the US market as well as going more worldwide. We're lucky enough to have some really global companies as customers. So even though we've mainly sold this solution in Northern Europe, it's actually been used in more than 60 countries around the world already because of these global companies. So it's everything from Australia to Singapore to like North America, South America, Africa, you name it. It's been used all around the world. So and then I think we see ourselves as being sort of on the technological forefront, and we should certainly continue being that. I think we will strive to be like a year or two ahead of the market and continue to be, even though that can be a challenging place to be because the market doesn't really know yet what is needed. So we're here to try and show to them as well what's actually possible. So staying ahead of that curve, that would be sort of, but really, like, what I would be most proud of is to see that we made a dent in this, like we made an impact. We can see that we have finally enabled these technologies to help out in the real world and help solve some of these really, really tangible problems that these companies are facing in these next, as you say, 5 years. Like, it's now they need technologies like this. So
yeah, very good. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Sune. Really, really appreciate your time today. And if I have to rate this episode, I would say it's been one of the better ones that I've done. It's not that some of them have been really great. Some of them are, somewhere in the middle, and then some of them are not that great. And the ones which are not that great, George and I just discuss openly after every podcast how we rank this episode. I don't know about George's opinion at the moment. We'll definitely have a chat, but I definitely think this is one of the top 10 ones, if not the top 5, because we've definitely had some really good speakers. And if more than 130 speakers, if I'm rating this in the top 10, then I'm sure we have definitely utilized our last half an hour to the best of our abilities. And thank you so much for that. And hope to share this episode out soon. And let's see what the audience thinks.
all right, yeah, thanks a lot for having me, and thanks for great discussions.
This is an ultimate global podcast. Hello, and welcome to our special weekly podcast on trending international and social affairs. You're listening to Saurabh Kora and George Mavros from Sydney.